Greetings and salutations, everybody. My name is Darkness1, here with something different. Today we're looking at another American engine. This time, following the trend we set last time, we're looking at another Central engine. Specifically, one of the New York Central Niagaras, who I've dubbed, as you read, Kyle. Specifically number 6015. Now, I'm sure some of you guys have been wondering where I've been and why this isn't Railway Series Customs. Well, two things. Reason number one, after, the new year changed and all, I decided I'd take a little bit of a break because, I'm not exactly a robotic movie making machine. I get tired. Everybody does. But in my off time, I wasn't, lazy. I did some work, both in terms of the American stuff and some upcoming Railway Series Custom stuff. And so I figured, hey, let's get back to track with this video, which was recorded on Wednesday. So now, I guess you know why this video was a bit early when I posted. But without further ado, that's not why you came here today. You didn't come for my explanations, you came for a model. So let's take a look at the Niagara and get a little bit of a deep dive. So, the Niagara class, a New York Central Type 484, was basically built at the end of 1945, or at least roughly after the war, sometime. And from the get-go, these engines basically proved themselves to be very powerful and very economical, challenging the diesel engines that would come to become standard nowadays. So you can already tell that while not being some streamliner, these Niagaras packed a punch, and you wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of one. It also does not help that these things are essentially mini FEFs, in a way, as they were 15 feet because of New York Central's tunnel clearances. So these things were small and powerful, even beating out some modern diesels on horsepower. Only really being beaten by the Norfolk and Western J class, of which there is one still today. So hey, I guess that's one claim to fame. But outside of that, these engines are well renowned for their looks and them being the ultimate dual service locomotive on the New York Central. So, that aside, let's take a look at number 6015 here, which would be one of the later engines in the batches. As from the start, you got 6,000 all the way up to 5,500 would actually be the last one, because despite the oddity in the numbering scheme, 5,500 was an S2, which would have been a deranged cousin, considering its end, ultimately. But here, you can also notice something odd. It has a unusual livery, as most Niagaras were painted in New York Central black. Or, in the case of some MTH stuff, will be painted in the same 20th century livery, as Dre back here, and his coaches. Now, the reason for this is because I want to experiment some of my modeling when it comes to the America stuff. While the Railway Series Custom stuff is already set in stone, I've already written down every engine that I'm going to be modeling, and I might not be writing the stories right now, but I have got them in my mind for when I get back into writing them. But with the American stuff, there's a little bit more leeway, as every single engine more or less is in some form of matte black, except the Baltimore and Ohio stuff, which seems to be some sort of very dark blue. Don't ask me why. So I decided, hey, what if for every few locomotives I do a little bit of styling? And Kyle here is one of those stylized engines, as he is rocking the later lightning stripe livery, although it is very subdued for obvious reasons. Now, personally, I think this is very stand-outish, because, it is not every day you see a steam locomotive wearing a livery that would be found right after dieselization took place. But, with that being said, I guess let's take a real once-over of them. You can see basically how each step of construction more or less plays off each other, especially with how his firebox is unfortunately jutting out. That was mostly because of an error on my part, but despite that, he still looks very clean and very close to the real things. If you want to pull up a picture on whatever device you're on, go for it. And the PT tender is still pretty good, although it misses the water cap that is found on Dre's tender back there. So that'll be something to shop for future. And here you can see inside the bunker, which unlike Dre's is only colored at the bottom from the coal dust. He's pretty clean. He is very clean, he is. Very clean. Engine hygiene is important. But anyway, now then, I guess as a little bonus before we start capping off, let's talk about the significance. Again, despite not being some streamliner or the first very engine I've made, he is probably one of the arguably best for his, in terms of the looks I've made him with. As even though I've made newer engines in the background, as I've said, I've been busy, and here you can see one such new engine, there's still something about him that'll make you stare at him a bit more. Whether it be the inverted smoke deflectors, or just generally looking for flaws. Does not matter though. All in all, it's pretty solid. And that's pretty much why I figured, hey, for my next video, let's make it about Kyle. And don't worry, this fella will definitely get a video of his own. But another reason I like it is because, like Kyle and some of the other Eastern region stuff I've got, is because look at them together. Here you have 3 engines from rivaling companies. If you know who the one on the right is, or I guess what railroad it originated from, then you get it. But to be specific, Pennsy versus York. That's all you're gonna get, and I think you can find out for yourself from there. Now, that being said, I guess to cap off, let's quickly switch out Dre for Kyle. As, after all, he is dual service. And here you can see on the 20th Century Limited, at least 4 coaches of it, because I have 17. Once again, I was busy, and I built 17 of those suckers. So, hey, maybe I'll cover them later. But, without further ado, this has been your local Dark Chaotix 1, and I will see you for the rest of the year. Hope you have a wonderful one. Goodbye!